Welcome, friends, to this episode of the Everyday Educator Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Bailey, and I'm excited to spend this time with you today as we encourage one another, learn together, and ponder the challenges and the delights that make homeschooling the adventure of a lifetime. Now, whether you're just considering this homeschooling possibility or deep into the daily delight of family learning, I believe you'll enjoy thinking along with us. But don't forget, although this online community is awesome, you'll find even closer support in a local CC community. So go to classicalconversations.com and find a community near you today. So, listeners, this is one of our first episodes with video too. And so, my guest, Deb, and I are sitting here thinking, okay, don't scratch your nose.
Yeah.
Don't flick your hair. Don't shift in your seat because people are watching us. So, if I'm a little awkward, it probably means that I all of a sudden remembered that you could see my facial expressions. And so they are sometimes speaking out loud. And I have a lot of feelings about the topic that we're going to cover today, finishing strong, as we all approach the end of our CC year. You know, community days are coming to a close. Our kids are in the thick of last minute projects and end of the year celebrations. Sometimes mamas and daddies, I know we're tired. And dare I say, sometimes everybody in our family is just the smallest bit tired of it. And so we are here to encourage one another in how to finish strong. And I have a dear friend, Deb Schweitzer, with me today. Deb has lots of experience as a homeschooling mom and as a homeschooling community leader. And so we're going to pick Deb's brain about how to finish strong with your students and what you as a parent can do to help your student finish strong and bring your school year to what you'll consider a successful end. So, Deb, I'm so glad that you're here with me today to talk about this. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me and picking my tired brain as well as
Yes.
we're in the last 5 weeks of CC as well. So it's fun though.
Yeah, that's what I want people to know. The podcast guest that I bring to you guys every week and my own perspective are not coming from a talking head point of view, but from the point of view of moms and dads who are in the trenches too. And so, you know, Deb is probably sitting here thinking, I want to talk to these dear folks, but I also have children who have XYZ project and students who are working on a senior thesis or who are waiting for me to give them one more prod of goodness to the end. And so we feel your pain and we feel your delight as you are helping your students come to the end of a great year. We want to help you help them celebrate success. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to let everybody see how credentialed you are, Deb, for this very thing. So I want you to tell people, how long have you been homeschooling?
Oh, so I know when I was thinking about this, I started to age myself tremendously.
Oh gosh,
So
I know. You just don't.
what in the world? So I've been homeschooling for 20 years. I've actually hit the 20-year milestone this year. So I've been homeschooling for 20 years.
That's
And
awesome.
I've been doing CC for 15
Okay.
of those 20
Yep.
years. I
Yep.
came in 5 years into that, and I've been directing in the communities or tutoring or directing in the communities from the moment that I started. So definitely have been hitting the ground running all the way through.
Yeah. It does feel strange when you think back. You think, well, I've been doing this for a few years. I probably have, 8 to 10 years of experience. And then you look back and you think, oh, no, it was 20 years. And so I personally can't decide if homeschooling kept me young or has aged me terribly. I don't know.
Maybe it's a bit of both.
That's right. I do know that it's been a blessing and that God has, I will say this, and this is a different podcast. We'll cover this at a different time. I feel like God has blessed me and grown me more than I was ever able to grow my children. And so
Oh, 100%.
homeschooling, parents, if you're coming to the end of the year and you think, man, I feel like I was the one who was schooled this year, just know you're in good company. And I really do think that homeschooling is the most refining and redeeming endeavor of a
Mhm.
parent's life. But that, like I said, that's a different podcast. So let's think about this finishing strong. As a parent, Deb, and as a director,
Mhm.
which is harder for you, starting the year or finishing well?
Oh, well,
Ooh,
I'm sure it all depends on personality. So my
good point.
personality loves to, I have a, I feel like I start well. So
Yes.
I'm a
Okay.
planner, and so
Okay.
I'm able to like try to get all my ducks in a row, and I have all these great, wonderful ideas of how I'm going to start the school year, and it's
Yes.
going to be
Yes.
amazing, and all this different stuff. And then I think finishing is always a lot harder. I'm like, almost there. I'm
Right.
gonna make it.
Right.
I'm
R-
trudging to the finish line and thinking about,
Pulling
yes.
people in assignments after you on a big chain. Yeah.
And realizing which ones I've dropped and that's okay.
And that's
And
okay.
it's, which ones have I been able to keep and what
Hmm.
ideas stayed strong and which ideas fell off the wagon. And that's all right. It's all good. It's part of the process. And just
Yeah.
remembering it's lifetime. So I think we can look at, May as like it's this hard finish line, and but it's, every time I step back and say, hey, I'm in this for the long haul with my children.
Yes, yes. And this May, the end of this year, is like a mile marker on your
Mm-hmm.
journey. It's
Yes.
not, perhaps, for
Mm-hmm.
many of us, not the final destination. Now, we'll talk in a minute. For some moms and dads, this May,
Mm-hmm.
there's a definite finish line that they're
Mm-hmm.
crossing. But for most of us, you're right. We are trying to get across the finish line that looked so full of promise and so far away when we started. I tend to be like you. I love the start of a school year. Even when I was a student, man, I loved the idea of new notebooks and there weren't any scratched out places in them. And
Yes.
all my pencils were sharp and all my
Yep.
pens were full of ink. And,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any of the little ratty, torn out pieces
Yes.
in my spiral notebooks. So there's something fresh and
Yes.
exciting and turning a new leaf
Mm-hmm.
about the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
The end of the year for many of us, like you said, just is a fight to the finish. It
Mm-hmm.
is, you had all these plans and now you're looking and you're thinking, well, some of them are still doable. Or
Mm-hmm.
some of them are barely doable. And some of those, is that what that was I left back there in the dust? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just sometimes for most of us, finishing strong is harder.
Yeah.
Because I think because we're tired. And
Yes.
I think for some of us, our goals changed in the middle and we didn't recalibrate. So
Mm-hmm.
we still, you know, on paper, still have these goals that maybe we stopped really working toward. And all of a sudden we think, oh, I wrote that down and we're for sure not going to make that because
Yeah.
it fell off the radar. And so
Mm-hmm.
some of us can beat ourselves up about that.
Yeah.
And so finishing strong, well, that makes it a challenge. What else do you think? I want to talk about why is finishing strong a challenge? What are the pain points? What are the
Mm-hmm.
issues that we feel in a lot of different ways? So what what are the challenges to finishing strong at home? So I mean, not even what's due in community and what other people
Mm-hmm.
are expecting of you as a director or your children as community participants. What makes finishing strong challenging at home?
I think, as I think there's a whole sense of that there, we want to be done. Like if you're like my mind, I want to be done so I can have my season of rest. And because I take summer, not everybody does, but I take summers off. And so for me personally, that concept at home of I I personally want rest.
Yes,
And so I want my
absolutely.
kids to be done so that I
Yes,
can have rest.
yes.
And so I think that I sometimes I need to pull myself back and say,
Mm.
hey, um, don't
Deep
get
breath.
so, yeah,
Mhm.
don't get so caught up in the calendar. Allow God's grace to really kind of come in during this season. And I think different personalities handle things differently, but I definitely get into a place where I want it done
Right,
so
and you
that
start,
it can be there. And the calendar starts to dictate my focus. And
"Ooh, Deb,
God
that's so
spoke
good."
to me about just take your eyes off the calendar and put your eyes on me. And when I can do that, when I start to shift, I think that's probably my personal biggest pain point at the end of the year is that I'm
Yes.
looking at the calendar. I'm seeing all the activities, all the projects, all the assignments that, my kids have, and I just get zoomed in on the calendar and
Right, it all
I
has to be
forget to
done
lift
by
up.
this block.
Yeah. And I
Yep.
forget to lift up my eyes and just say, I need to lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? It comes from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. And to just sit back and say, you know what? God, you are in charge of this calendar. You are in charge of every single one of these things that I have color coded and lined up and everything else. You're in charge of it. And some of these things may not be your plan for us this month, even though I think it is. And some are,
Right.
and are things that we have to buckle down and do. And can you lead me, God? Can I lift up my eyes from what I think we have? And can I lift up my
Mm.
eyes and let you show me what we have the grace for in this season of life and what you are calling us to work hard on? What are you calling us to maybe let go of? What are you calling us to do the best that we can in at this
Right,
moment?
right.
And balance that for me, God, so that I'm not running my family or like trying to show my family a way that's made by man, but that's made by you. And my calendar's helpful. I love calendars.
Absolutely. It can keep us focused and
Yes.
moving ahead instead of just spiraling like,
Hmm.
"Oh." It
Yes.
will
So I
keep
don't want
us
to be like,
forward.
I don't want to be all over the place. I want to help
Right,
my children by giving them direction. They need
right.
direction and they need guidance, right? They need those boundaries during this season. So giving
Mhm.
that focus to our kids helps remove the pain points a little bit because they're like, I don't know what to do next. They need a little
Right,
bit more help
right.
at the end of the year with all those projects and the different things coming in. They need a little bit more.
Yeah.
Let me walk you through this and show you how to manage your time and balance your time. So,
I
but
mhm.
it's just helpful for them.
You know what? You have said so many wise things. I wish I could just like go back and replay it in slow motion. I love your testimony because I think a lot of us can feel it of falling into the trap of having the calendar dictate our pace
Mhm,
because we're so focused on this was the plan and this is the date on the
mhm,
calendar. Here's my red X. All this stuff has to
mhm,
be done by then. And then we start to feel it all piling up behind us like a
mhm,
tidal wave ready to
mhm,
crash on us
mhm,
instead of the gentle swell that's going to take us
mhm.
along. I tend to fall into that too. Like once I have made a plan, it's really hard for me to accept a change to the plan. And so if I think we're going to be done, then like there's something in my spirit that has been pressing toward that. And I
Mhm,
guess internally thinking I can keep going because there's the end,
mhm.
but your counsel to stop and breathe and look up and ask the Lord, it that is the end, but does it have to be right there? We do
Yeah,
want to accomplish these things, or maybe that's no longer ours to do.
right.
Maybe, the focus has changed.
And I think sometimes, like, there are things that are the hard deadlines, and we know it, but then
Right.
sometimes God extends things out for us that in ways
Yes.
that we don't know that He's going to do. I
Right.
love this. My daughter told me this. story when she was, and I use it for an analogy for homeschool all the time now, where
Perfect.
she went to summer camp when she was younger, and she had to pass a pretty rigorous swim test. And so
Ooh.
she was trying to get ready for it. And swimming's not our natural thing. We don't do a ton of swimming in
Right.
our home, but
Yes.
she was fine. Like she should be able to
Yeah.
do it. And so
Yeah.
it was a 4-lap swim test and then some other things. And so she said 4 laps. And so she did up and down and up and down. And she thought she was done. So she thought that that was four
Oh,
laps. And so
right.
she got to what she thought was the end. And she realized,
She's only halfway.
I'm only halfway. I'm only halfway.
Oh,
And
wow.
all of a sudden, everything that she thought she could do in her own strength was gone. And she
Mhm.
said, she literally prayed, God, I need you, because that
Mhm.
mental block of I'm
Mhm.
only halfway there and I thought I was done.
Right.
And she had to just rely on God's grace to do another full, 2 laps. And she said, I felt something kick in, Mom. I felt something kick in. And she passed the test. And we talk about that all the time. And I say,
Yeah.
I feel that way sometimes with school, that, we're doing all this, learning at home and these projects. And I thought we were done. And then I go and see, oh, we didn't do that as
Right.
fully as I thought we did, like
Right.
maybe we got
Right.
to like a project and you did it, but all the maybe some of that back work that was supposed to have happened, maybe we were winging it a little bit,
Right.
and we have to go a little bit longer to just ensure that we finish that, right? And
Mhm.
I was like, that's when God's grace kicks in. God's
Yeah.
grace kicks in when we need
Yeah.
it, and that we don't have to keep trying to do it in our own strength. We can rely on
Mhm.
God's strength to take us all the way through to bring it to full completion. It is by God's grace that we
That
do
is
that.
that is great.
Hey, everybody, we want to interrupt the show to talk to you about ACCU. Where you bank matters, and America's Christian Credit Union is proud to partner with Classical Conversations to provide a full suite of banking services to CC communities across the country. America's Christian Credit Union is a cooperative of believers pooling resources together to support a biblical worldview and the greater body of Christ. So whether you're a licensed director looking for better business banking or a family seeking a financial partner that shares your values, ACCU is here to serve. ACCU invites you to join and enjoy the many benefits of membership. Learn more about America's Christian Credit Union by visiting our episode's show notes. Let's get back to the show.
That's very heartening testimony, Deb, and I appreciate it. And you said one thing about your students that we're going to come back to in a moment. Sometimes at the end, when there are a lot of things that you're bringing to the end, bringing full circle, what our students need from us at the end is
Mhm.
different from what they need from us in the early days and in the middle. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But what is, because you've been a director for a lot of
Mhm.
years also, and there are unique challenges to finishing well
Mhm.
in community. What are some of those challenges?
Yeah, well, spring fever hits, right?
Oh, yeah. And corporately felt that is a big thing.
Across the whole community, doesn't
Yeah.
matter the age. Like
Yeah.
spring fever hits, everyone senses the end coming, and everybody's like, "Da-doing!"
That's
You're like,
right.
"What is this
Exactly.
wild crew that I have sitting here before me?" And
Right.
so, helping everybody kind of like capturing that energy. Like, how can we
Yes.
use that
Yes.
energy to actually propel us forward? And so, taking students outside if
Oh,
you have the
good.
opportunity in the spring and letting them relish the warmer weather if you've been
Yeah.
somewhere that's cold, and still continuing learning, I think really helps the dynamic in community to be able to get
Mhm.
out there and spend some time
Mhm.
outdoors. They need it.
Mhm.
Let them run around for a minute. I don't care what age, from 4 to
That's what I was gonna
18,
say. It
they
doesn't
still need to
matter.
do it.
Yep.
They need to run around. They
Yep.
have a lot of pent up energy. Really sitting down and meeting with the students. Like, so I just had a touch point with all of our families. I said, okay, so this is where we are. How do we finish strong? I said, let's make
Oh,
sure we
good.
see what's coming. let me help you think through all of the stuff that's coming at the end of the year and what's vital for your family and your educational goals. And I think that's a great question directors can ask families is,
Yes.
here's this,
Here's what's left.
what's important right now? Like
Right.
what's key in your child's education right now? What does he or she need to improve in or focus on or thrive in at this
Yes.
point?
Yes.
And how can we not drop everything else, but put some focus there and tailor some of these other things to ensure that that sense of accomplishment comes at the end of
Oh,
the year. We don't want
yes.
to end the academic year and say, hey, I feel like I didn't do anything right at the end.
Right. I
We want
made
to
a
help bring
mess
in
of
that
all of
focus.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is so good. Okay. Listeners, if your director has not done this with your students, you can do it, but you can
Yeah.
also ask your director, okay, could you maybe help me help our community see what's left to do and help us prioritize. That
Mm-hmm.
is what a blessing, Deb, you are to those families. That's really good because you're right. There's a lot going on in the community. And for older students, okay, so here's a real pain point. Usually, our challenge students still have some weeks to go when our foundation students are done,
Mm-hmm.
done. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in the community, now I can remember sometimes my challenge students were actually kind of glad when all the hubbub of foundations and essentials kids
Mm-hmm.
were gone. It was a quieter campus, it was a
Mm-hmm.
quieter church building. The halls were not as busy, the bathrooms were not as crowded. I don't know, it's almost like the tone of the conversations went up
Mm-hmm.
when it
Mm-hmm.
was just the older kids left in community. But it is a challenge for families that have kids that are done and families that have kids that are still working
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes still working on the hard stuff or
Yeah.
the stuff that is the showcase of all the
Mm-hmm.
skills that they have sharpened over the
Mm-hmm.
years. So, all right, we've talked a little bit about what are the challenges for parents to finish strong.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right. As a parent, you're ready for a break too. I mean, I can remember being a student thinking about my parents. You have no idea the stress I'm under with all of these exams coming up and all
Yep.
these big
Mm-hmm.
papers and all these projects.
Mm-hmm.
You just, I wish I had your life because you really don't have any problems. And see, spoken like or thought like a true
Yeah.
teenager.
Yeah.
But there are things that are difficult for us as parents.
Yes.
Some of the problems for parents in finishing strong is that juggling of all
Mm-hmm.
the needs of all of your children at once. Speak to that, Deb, and the other challenges that
Mm-hmm.
parents feel about finishing strong.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely just say, like, I have been reduced to tears numerous April and May months, not
Oh
because
my gosh, me too.
just because it can just there are so many things happening, and as much as we want to be relying on God's grace, there are just times and seasons where you're just like, I cannot do
Right.
this. And
Yeah,
it's
you
just,
wanna say to your kid, "You have these 3 things, but so does your sister and your 2
Mhm,
brothers, and I have
mhm.
all 12 of them."
Yes,
Woo!
I'm like, woohoo, and somehow we're going to do this.
Right.
Um, and I just remember when I had, so my son was doing Memory Master, my daughter, I had a daughter in Challenge 4, a son in
Oh,
Challenge
wow.
2, and I was directing. I had a daughter in Challenge A and a son doing Memory Master and Essentials and Faces of History. And
Oh, my
like,
word.
it's all coming at once. And
Right.
I was like, and they're all like, Mom, I need this. Mom, I need this. Mom, I need this. Mom, can you help me
Everybody
with this?
needs it at the same time.
And I'm just being stretched, here and there and everywhere. And just, I think I would normally have a mental breakdown. And then after I had my mental breakdown,
After that
I
5
would,
minutes of allotted time.
yes,
Yes.
God would gently remind me again, this is not about you,
Right.
and that, my grace is sufficient for you in this. If your
Mhm.
grace is sufficient for Paul, then your grace is sufficient
Yes.
for me.
Yes.
And so then one of my tips was that I always just tried to schedule at the end of the year, like make sure I had individual time with each
Yes.
kid, like
What a great idea.
sometimes we're doing with the one room schoolhouse and we have everybody together
Yep.
and we're used to that. But during the end, it's important that they get individual time was my big takeaway, that I need to really spend some individual time with my youngest if he's doing Memory Master and Faces of
Right.
History.
Right.
And my olders too, like we get so used to their independence as homeschool parents. Like,
Yes.
we're like, you have just been
Yes.
failing, you are independent, you're doing this, and it frees us up and we're just having these conversations with them. But at the end of the academic year, from the youngest to the oldest, they all just need some individual time of just, hey, let me sit down with you and see how this project is coming along. Let's make sure we're touching base on this one and that we're looking at your schedule and how your time is going and what's distracting you, what's helping you. And they just need that. So my biggest takeaway in my really busy time when all four were doing this thing at once was,
Yes.
pull back, Deb, for a minute and just make sure you're having that individual time, because then they can take it and they can
run with it a little bit.
run more, right?
Mhm.
And so I need to equip them to run the race. And so that just requires a little bit more individual time
Yeah.
at that end of the year.
Yeah. That is really, really good. That's wise counsel. And somehow, Deb, it's counterintuitive because for those of us who have multiple children
Mm-hmm.
who are freaking out about multiple different things all at the same time, we
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, I got to sit you all down and give everybody their marching orders.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. What they need is the individualized attention for their
Mm-hmm.
specific freak out moment,
Yeah. What's yours?
Yes. So, because sometimes it is an older student who sees this huge task still to go. I am here and I have to get here and I don't have very long. And
Mm-hmm.
and I had a daughter who was paralyzed by those big she would such a good student, but she would get to a certain point and there's like a week left and she knew what to do, but she's like paralyzed. And so she needed me, even as an older student, she needed me to say, and she knew all this, but
Mm-hmm.
in that time, she needed me to say, okay, honey, I think that you need to work on this for an hour, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to need you to take a 10-minute break, run around, go walk
Yes.
the trail, go get a drink, go check your email. And then I'm going to need you, I think you need to come back and work for 45 minutes. And then we're going to have a check in time. And then I
Mm-hmm.
need you to work for an hour and then we're going to have lunch. And we're just going to,
Yes.
and I would say, and she knew that she needed to work and break
Mm-hmm.
and work and break. But she almost needed somebody to tell her she needed a schedule to say, okay, because this is going to help me move forward. And then at the end of the day, she could look back and be heartened that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I did bite off those pieces and I did chew it up and
Mm-hmm.
I am farther along. So
Yeah.
you're right. They just need individual time. And sometimes they need help that you think they've grown past.
Yes, because that executive function paralysis that you're talking about
Yes,
is real.
it
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 is a
is
real thing.
real.
It's a real for them and it's real for us, right?
Yep.
So that's why I was like, I would get in that mode. And when I'm in that mode and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I'm just looking at it, I'm just looking at my calendar and I'm looking at
It's
everything
like,
and
and you don't know how to start. And so
and
you
like 20 minutes have gone by and I'm still looking
right,
at my calendar.
exactly.
I was like, what on the world is going on? And so pausing ourselves and
Yep.
remembering like that's what we need to do is remember we need to go for a walk as homeschool
Right.
mamas. We need to go out in the fresh air and take a minute and just let
Yep.
God order our thoughts for a little bit. And then we can come back and help our children get out of that paralysis as well and say, hey, you need this too. This
Right.
is so important for you, right? To be able to just
Yeah.
take
Yes.
a breath and remember, and then just that resetting just helps so much to let
It
some other things go and just get reset. Okay, this is what I'm going to do right now.
Yes, and what we want to do for our children is call them back to the joy of
Mm-hmm.
learning.
Mm-hmm.
So if when you get caught up in the spinning, I have so much to do, then it just becomes something to finish, not
Mm-hmm.
something to relish and learn from. So
Yeah.
let's think about, okay, what's the challenge for our younger kids? So let's think about, like, for foundations and essential students, many of them are coming to the end and they are interested in becoming memory masters, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or subject matter experts for kids
Mm-hmm.
who are going to choose a strand to
Mm-hmm.
memorize. For essential students, a lot of them have one last big paper that they're showing what they've learned. Faces of History has come up. What are the challenges for our younger students, and how do we as parents help them?
Yeah, that again, I think that individual time. So for a memory master, there's no way that a child's going to be able to get through all of that if they're working at it without mama's or
Right.
a sibling's guidance. And
That's right,
so
a sibling.
that's the blessing of, larger families is that we can have an older child say, hey, help your younger child by
Mhm.
going through the questions
Mhm.
and being
Mhm.
able to create that family dynamic, which by the way, has the added bonus of your older children who think they know everything going
Right,
over the memory
review.
arc again.
That's right,
That works out
reminding
really well.
themselves. That's
Yeah.
perfect. That's
Like,
perfect.
let's remember that timeline and all those fun history and science facts. So that actually works out really
Yeah,
well with
yeah.
the larger families to be able to do that. But, and then just encouraging them. Like I remember when my son wanted to do memory master, just saying, I first of all, I was like, you don't have to do it because he
Right,
saw an older sibling do it. It's like, this is not a requirement of you. This
right,
is
right.
something we're learning as we go. This does require more work on your part. Do you want to do it? And when he said yes, then that was more of his, like at a young age, starting that personal ownership. And I said, all right, let's set it up for
Right.
you. Let me find some ways to make this. And that was more pre-work type of thing so that the end could go a little bit better. It's
Yes,
just setting
very
up
smart.
those things that they could be like, I'm just going to practice this and I have a sheet to
Right,
practice on or I have a way to
right.
practice. But at the end, as they're going through that time with mom, dad, aunts, uncles, cousins,
Yep,
siblings,
yep,
neighbors who
yep.
are all willing to kind of help in with that. It reminds me of the movie Akilah and the Bee when she was doing the spelling
Yes,
bee.
yes,
And like
all the people in the
everybody
neighborhood helped her. Yeah,
like use those resources. You can only do
yes,
so much, mama. So,
that's
use all
right,
those resources and
that's
let
right.
everyone help you along
Yeah.
in that memory master drilling.
And I think, Deb, one of the best things that we can do for our children at the very end is to remind them of why they wanted to do it.
Hmm.
Um, Instead of just feeling the stress. So, what excited you about this? What do you
Hmm.
enjoy? What have you enjoyed about the year? And reminding them that it's not all about performance and it's
Yeah.
not only about the destination. It's about the journey and your attitude about the journey and what you pick up along the way
Hmm.
that you never expected to
Yeah.
get along the way.
And just as an encouragement, because there is so much that happens if, whatever you're doing, whether you're a subject matter expert, if you're going for memory master, whatever it is. My son, my oldest son, he struggled with, some dyslexia and things like
Mhm.
that. And he always struggled when he was younger, not feeling like he could do things. And at some point, he decided that he wanted to do the memory master. And at the end of it, he looked at me and he said, Mom, I'm smart.
Oh,
And
isn't that the best? Oh,
crying, bawling my
yes,
eyes out because
yes.
before he was so down on himself. And did he do everything perfectly the first time? No. And that was okay. He was seeing that he could learn,
Yes.
that he could understand things and express things. And all of a sudden
Oh,
his whole attitude toward education changed in a major way, because he was like, I can do stuff. And that changed everything. Then I was like, well, remember how you did this? You can do that with writing too. You didn't think you could do it, but
yes.
you can. And he's like, you're right.
Yes.
I can do it. And was it perfect? No, but he could do it. And that's, I
Right.
think, part of the beauty of the journey. Uh,
Yes.
Part of finishing strong is remembering it's a journey. Even when your
Yes.
Challenge 4 student
Right.
graduates and walks down that aisle for a cap and gown, it's still a
It's still
journey.
right. That
It's
was
still a
not
journey.
the last exit on your
Yes.
journey.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's one season ending, but the learning journey has not ended. And to know that we're
absolutely.
creating that lifelong learning, I think it just gives a little bit of a sigh of relief.
It
Okay,
does.
finishing strong does not mean that everything was checked off at the end of this
Right.
year. Finishing strong means that my child is learning to love learning and is
Yes.
learning how to learn in the process. And that's finishing strong.
And I think if we can help our students realize that, like you said, that end is a false finish
Mhm.
line.
Yes.
It's going to keep going, but that the beauty of crossing that finish line
Mhm.
is in the looking back to where you started and
Mhm.
seeing the progress that you made.
Mhm.
One of my daughters was like your son in writing. She just said, she would say to me, I don't think that way. I don't,
Mhm.
she asked me one time, do you just think in 5 paragraph essays, mama? And I thought, I mean, yes, I kind of do. And do you not? And the truth was that was not she she said, I don't words don't flow like that for me. It
Mhm.
was a real struggle. And
Mhm.
as a challenge A student, she just never felt like she was a good writer.
Mhm.
In the last paper she wrote, though, she had worked hard and this was at a point where they were still doing a lot of writing instruction in challenge
Mhm.
A. And so she got to the end of the year and she read her paper to me and her daddy out
Mhm.
loud. And she looked up at me and she just had this amazement on her face. She said, I am a good writer. And it was another one of those
Yeah.
bawling moments.
Yeah.
And she was able to look back and she was able to say, at the beginning of the year, I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
now I can do this. And
Mhm.
was it, she would look at it now and think, well, that was really mechanical and that was
Yep.
very stiff.
Mhm.
But as a child, she was
Mhm.
able to look and see where she had come from. And
Mhm.
so crossing that line was a huge celebration for her. And we
Mhm.
celebrated that she could
Yes.
see herself in a different light.
Yes.
That's what we want for our children at the end of the year. Finishing well doesn't mean they won all the prizes and maybe won the
Mhm.
$10,000 National Memory
Mhm.
Master Prize. It is, can they look back and
Mhm.
see how far they came
Yes. And
and
how
have
far we've come
and
as
how
moms.
far as a family did we come?
Yep.
Because
Mhm.
now we know what to celebrate and we
Yes.
know what better assessment is. And what
Mhm.
a blessing to our
I
students.
I think one of the best ways to finish strong, to bless your family, is to take time when you can to pause, like when the breath comes, but pause and spend some time reflecting on the year. Spend
Yes.
some time looking back at, what did we start? Where did we start?
Yes.
How did we
Yes.
start? What were we trying to learn in this strand, or in,
Mhm.
is it like what facts did we memorize if we were younger, or
Mhm.
um, what paragraph did we write to this year that stands
Yes.
out? And
Yes.
to take the time to celebrate with each of your kids the process that they went through for the year. I mean, you know, my son is like, when I finish challenge one, can I burn my Henley book? Like, so like, these are the things
Yes,
that, like,
yes, they're a student. Yep.
but I was like, no. And instead, let's think about what concepts we actually,
Right. So what do you
learned
know
this year.
now?
Yeah. What do you know now that you didn't know? And what did you learn in economics that you didn't know? You just finished your policy debate. Let's talk about what you actually discovered in that.
Yes.
Let's celebrate the fact that you just did an incredible speech that you didn't think you were going to be able to do. You did a rebuttal.
Right.
What in
Right.
the world? You did it, And so all of these things and just celebrating with them and just saying, all of these things are worth a celebration. You've
Yes.
done so much. And instead of them thinking, I didn't get that paper done and I didn't finish that assignment or,
Or I rushed
celebrate.
this or
Yeah.
right.
Because
Didn't
we
do my
all
best.
do. We
Right.
all do, and there's always room for growth. You can set new goals, you can change things around eventually, but celebrate,
Yes.
really celebrate the goodness of God, the truth, beauty, and goodness that you've discovered in this year, the one that you've had. There is goodness in it. There's beauty in
Yes.
it. There's so much
Yes.
truth in it. So celebrate it. Enjoy that moment with
Oh,
them.
that's so good, Deb. And I love the idea of looking back to see how much you've learned and what you've learned and
Mhm.
how you've grown. And parents, I want to encourage you that doesn't happen just in your academic subjects. It's not
Mhm.
just that you did a rebuttal for the first time or that
Mhm.
you wrote an actual senior thesis
Mhm.
or that you participated in a mock trial and did a
Mhm.
great job of all your speeches. Maybe it's looking back, okay, what did God teach you this year about perseverance,
Yes.
about pride,
Mhm.
about mercy,
Mhm.
about being kind? It,
Mhm.
if we can look back and help
Yes.
our students see how they have grown in taking ownership for their own work and not
Mhm.
passing blame, um,
Mhm.
what a great the spiritual aspects of growth that we see in our children um, are sometimes overlooked, especially by our kids,
Mhm.
because they're so eager to finish their work and they don't see that really that's what blesses our hearts when we can see that the Lord has grown them in maturity. We are celebrating that, but I think we need to help them celebrate what God's done in their
Yeah.
hearts.
There's so much discipleship that is happening through
Yeah.
homeschooling, right? That it goes
Yes.
so much deeper than academics. There's
Mhm.
so much growth. I know
Mhm.
I can't even imagine my life without homeschooling in the way that I've personally grown, let alone seeing the change and the transformation in my children and just knowing the work that God's done and the good and the bad and the ugly. It's all been working together for his good and his purposes. And I'm so thankful that we have the freedom to be able to homeschool our kids and be
Yeah.
able to have an
Yes.
opportunity, not just to teach them, but to disciple them. That
Mhm.
what a gift from the Lord to be able to have that in our families.
That is so encouraging. And so I sort of want to say at this point, and that's how you finish strong, families. You stop, you take a deep breath, you have one-on-one time with your kids, you
Mhm.
assess what where are we and where do we still want to go and map out some steps for how to get there. But also one of the ways to finish strong is to look back and
Mhm.
see where the Lord has brought you and be
Mhm.
sure that you include celebration. Deb,
Yeah.
thank you for all that you have given us so much to think about and so much good wisdom, but also some really good practical tips that I feel like we're all going to go and massage over the next couple of weeks as we finish strong. So thank you, Deb. I appreciate it.
Thank
It's
you
been
so much,
awesome.
Lisa.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week and go celebrate something today with your kids.
Yes.
Bye bye.